This is my latest roadside find. Somebody put it out at the curb with this free sign on it. And I usually avoid pieces with this kind of 1950s blonde finish because it tends to be really hard to remove. But I figured it was free, so I'll give it a try. It's in really bad shape, and it looks like the veneer is oak. The drawer is very dirty. It's got two doors, and it does have a shelf that goes with it, but it's not in it at the moment. Some thumbtacks in the door. It also looks like somebody moved the handles. See the hole here. Looks like they used to be there, but they moved them here. Maybe it was just easier to open the doors that way. But I'll probably put them back where they were. Looks like it was a server, number 906. Not sure yet what I'm going to do with it, what kind of finish I'll put on it. That kind of depends on how well I can get off the existing finish and whether or not there's any of it that's stuck in the grain. Sometimes they use some kind of a whitish wood filler, grain filler with this kind of finish that is hard to get out, but we'll see. Before I start removing the finish, I want to fix some of the veneer issues. Here on the top, there's a lot of spots where the veneer has come up. Looks like it was probably wet for a long time and the glue failed. So I want to glue that down. To do that, I'm going to use a glue syringe. And I'm just going to try to get under the veneer and shoot some glue under there. And there's so many spots, I'll probably end up missing a few, but I can get them later, the second time around. I'm using this big piece of, I don't know, granite, maybe? Countertop material, just to help keep it down, and then I'll put a couple of clamps on. Now just let it dry. It's now the next morning, and this is dried overnight. So let's take a look and see if it worked. Time for a hammer. Looks pretty good. There are a few spots, like right here, that's still loose, but I figured that would happen. So I'll just go through and glue down any other spots I need to. But most of it is glued down. So I'm in the process of flipping the piece upside down so that I can work on the veneer on the bottom edge. And I noticed something interesting on the bottom. There are these wood strips on either side, and they have little feet on them, as if at some point the legs were maybe removed and it just sat on these wood strips. It doesn't look like these strips are original from the factory because there is finish on them, and finish that doesn't match the rest of the piece. So it looks as if maybe somebody added them at some point after it was made, and I guess removed the legs so that it could sit lower on the floor. Not sure, but it's interesting. And while I'm down here, I'm going to remove the legs. Again, just to make it a little easier to work on. And the legs are a little loose, so then I can try to tighten those up. And once those legs are off, then I can put it on a little dolly and just wheel it around. Most of the bottom edge of the veneer is loose, but it's just a little bit loose. So I'm going to fix that with some super glue, some thin super glue. Just drizzle it in there. And then clamp it up. And this dries really quick, so the only reason I'm clamping it is because it's such a large area and I can't hold it all down without the clamps. I'll just leave it for a couple minutes. There's some loose veneer here on the bottom. This is a pretty big spot here where it's come loose. So for that, I'm just going to shoot some glue in there and then clamp it up. And for a little spot like this, again, I'll just put some super glue in there. And then hold it down, spray some accelerator. Just makes the glue dry quicker. Although in this case, it may not help at all because all the glue is under the veneer and the accelerator probably can't get to it, but I sprayed it anyway. Then hope I didn't glue my finger to the veneer. And there it is. Time to start removing the finish. And I'm going to start with a scraper, see how that goes. So far it's coming off really easy. Hopefully the rest of it is this easy. And with the finish off here, this is the side of the top. We can see that the top is made of solid wood, strips of solid wood glued together with the veneer glued on top. To scrape this edge, I'm going to use this little blade here. This is just a little too big for this area. And this is actually a blade from this scraper. I can't use it with the blade in here because the handle just doesn't allow me to get at the right angle. So I just took it off and I'm just going to do this by hand. Well, I've got most of the finish off of the top, and as expected, it's in really bad shape. Mostly on this end, well, this is the worst. Lots of dark marks, probably from water sitting on it. And there's more dark areas here and all over it. It does look like there's some white filler in the grain. Not sure how well it's going to come across on camera. I'm not sure yet how I'm going to get that out. Not sure if this can be saved, but I'm going to try, and I think the first thing I'll try after sanding it just a little bit is some oxalic acid and see if that at least gets rid of the black marks, and then take it from there. So I've got most of the finish stripped off, but there is still a very thin layer of white on here that was underneath the lacquer top coat. And this isn't quite as easy to scrape off because it's not as brittle as the lacquer. So I'm just going to use a stripper. And this is QCS by Stripwell. And just spray it on, let it do its thing. After it's sat for a while, just kind of wipe it gently with some fine steel wool. And spray a little water on it. And now it's pretty clean. It does look like there's still that whitish grain filler in the grain, but I'm not sure what I'm going to do about that yet. Might just have to work with it, or work around it. Now it's time to apply the oxalic acid, which I'm hoping is going to clear up these black marks. And I'm only applying this to the top because it's the only area that has these black marks. So it's been about 30 minutes and it already looks way better. So I'm just going to apply one more light application here and then probably let it dry a few hours. The oxalic acid has done its thing and the top actually looks pretty good considering what we started with. I just wet it down with some naphtha so you can see the grain. This is that corner that was really bad, and there are still some shadows of some dark spots, but I think it's workable. I think it can be saved. So the next thing I'm going to do is sand it, and I'll use an orbital sander for the top. The rest of the piece is not going to need much sanding, so I'll just do some light sanding on the rest of it by hand, since it's actually in pretty good shape. Again, considering how it looked when I found it. And I did end up using oxalic acid on the whole thing, even though I said I was just going to use it on the top. Not because it necessarily needed it, but I figured it couldn't hurt. There were probably some dark spots here and there that I was missing that could be helped by the oxalic acid. And the areas that don't have any stains, it's not going to have much effect on anyway, so it can't hurt. The interior of this piece is painted. This is one of the doors, and this is the interior side, and you can see it's kind of yellowish and pretty grimy too. And I was going to strip off the finish and possibly leave it just with a natural clear finish. But I started removing the finish on one door on the interior, and this is what it looks like. You can see I don't have all of the finish off yet, but I have enough to see what it's going to look like. And this is made up of a few different boards. Here's a seam right here between this board and that board. And this looks really green, and there's a green streak here. So just going by the green color, I'm assuming it's probably poplar. And if this is what it's going to look like when it's stripped, then I'm not going to bother going with a clear finish if it's going to be green and just all crazy colors. So instead, what I'll probably do is just continue scraping and sanding off just the upper layer of finish on here to get off all the grime and dirt. Probably just get it to this point, like this one. This didn't take very long. And I'll do the same thing with the interior of the rest of the piece, which is over here. And then I'll probably just paint it again. That seems like that makes the most sense. So probably just white, but I don't know, we'll see. So I'm running into an issue on the interior. This has one shelf that's adjustable, and it has these holes here for shelf pins. And this is one of the pins that I got out. And these are kind of interesting because they have almost like a thread in them. Hopefully you can see that goes around it. So you can't just pull it straight out. You have to turn it. And there's one that's stuck in there. I'm assuming somebody tried to pull it out straight, maybe with pliers or something like that, and just tore off the outside of it. And I'm having trouble getting it out. So first thing I'm going to try is to heat it up with a soldering iron and see if that allows me to pull it out. Try to grab it now. Nope, not gonna work. Maybe if I try to cave it in a little bit away from the sides of the hole, might help. There it goes. And now I can start sanding it to get it ready for paint. This piece has a lot of small chips in the veneer, like this one right here. And to fill those, I'm going to use a hard fill stick. And basically you just melt it into the defect. And there's a bunch of different colors that you can get. And if I wet this down a little bit, this is the color that I'm trying to match, because that's what it's going to look like once there's finish on it. So the color I found that's closest is this, which is maybe a little darker than most of it, but it's actually looks almost identical to these little dark streaks that are running through it. And this is a really small spot, so I think this will work. So I've got this tool here, which is basically like a soldering iron. Just gets hot. And then just melt it into the hole, like that. And then I've got this little tool here, which will smooth it out, just bring it down flush. And I can also just use utility knife blade. Could also sand it a little bit. And then we'll see how it looks. Yeah, it looks good. It's nearly invisible. So I'll just go through all the rest of the spots and do the same. I've got some more chips to fill here. This is on the edge of a door. So that looks a little bit dark, especially on the big spot. So I think I'm gonna blend in some of this lighter color. Just melt it in there and then kind of mix it around. That looks pretty good. Later on I'll probably come by and add some grain lines through that to help blend it in even better. Next up, I have to plug these holes. This is where the handle was moved to. Originally it would have been here, and I'm going to put it back in its original spot. So I just need to fill these, and to do that I'll cut some plugs out of this piece of oak flooring, and I'll use a plug cutter for that. Then I just glue them up. Then after they dry, I'll come back and trim them flush. And I'll have to do some filling here and here. The leg assemblies for this piece have a few issues. This one has cracks. This is made up of 3 boards, and the seam has separated. I tried bringing it back together with a clamp and it wouldn't go back. It only moved just a tiny bit, so I'm going to take a wedge and glue it in there with some epoxy, and that should keep it together. I'm going to try and apply it directly in here. Then use some dental floss to work it in. And I am going to put a clamp on it, and that'll bring it together just enough to tighten up those cracks. There's a pretty large veneer chip in the corner of this drawer, right here. And I've already cut out a few pieces of veneer to fill that in. I needed to do 3 pieces because it's pretty deep. So I needed 3 pieces of this veneer to fill that in. And it's not deep because the veneer, the oak veneer, is thick on this. The oak part of the veneer is actually very thin, and this layer below it is just some other kind of wood, not oak. I don't know what it is, but the oak part of it is, again, very thin. So the first thing I have to do is to trim this edge a little bit so it's not so jagged. I'll just use some super glue to glue these in. The color of the new veneer is lighter and less amberish than the original veneer. I'm going to try some stain. To get that new veneer closer in color to the old veneer. That might be a little too dark. Oh, maybe it's good. I think that's good for now. And I can always adjust it later after I've got some finish on. One thing I might want to do is put some white into the grain lines like the original veneer has. That might help it blend in, but get some finish on it first. Time to clean this. I'm hoping it'll just come up with some scrubbing. This is just basic cleaner. It's mostly actually dish soap and water. Oh, and that's not coming up. I'm going to try some steel wool. Actually, instead of steel wool, I just got this abrasive pad. It's sort of working, but it's going to take a while doing it like this. Maybe I can scrape it off. And while we're looking at this drawer, I wanted to point out the joint that's used. It's not a dovetail joint, which is fine by me. I'm not sure what you would call this, but it's some kind of a locking joint, and still sturdy after 60, 70 years. I feel like sometimes people make too big a deal about dovetail joints on factory-made furniture, as if it's a sign of quality. If you look at a lot of the ads online where people are selling a piece of old furniture, there's always a shot of the dovetail joint in the drawer, as if that means something. And while there is plenty of quality furniture out there with dovetail joints, I've also seen lots of cheap, badly constructed furniture with dovetail joints. If it's being made in a factory, it doesn't take much to make a dovetail joint. They just use a machine to make it. So it's not a deal breaker for me if it doesn't have dovetail joints. So I think I have all of the repairs done. And now I'm going to spray on some shellac, just some clear shellac. This won't be the final finish, but this will help to bring out any areas that might need some work. Maybe some areas need some stain, or maybe I missed some defects somewhere, and they'll pop out better with the shellac. And the shellac will also help seal it for the actual final coat. So I got the shellac on, and it actually doesn't look too bad. As I suspected, the top has the most issues. It's a little bit rough, but I'll figure out something to do with that. Actually, it looks pretty good compared to what I started with, but I think I could get it to look nicer. But the rest of it is pretty good looking. Obviously, I don't have the doors on right now, but those also look pretty good. So I'll just leave it for the night now and come back to it tomorrow and see what I need to do. So it's the day after I applied the shellac, and I'm just looking over the top, trying to figure out what I want to do with it. And one issue it has is places like this spot here. That's a spot where the finish was missing, just from wear or, I don't know, being outside or something. The finish was gone and the veneer was really worn, and the white stuff that's in the rest of the veneer is gone from that spot and a few other spots. So that's adding to the blotchy look. So I think what I'll do next is add some white gel stain to the top, and that should hopefully fill in the grain in those areas where the white has come out, which should hopefully make it look more uniform. Okay, so now I'm going to go over it again, but this time with a paper towel soaked with mineral spirits. Because I want to remove, hopefully, everything that's not in the grain. So I'm hoping this will just take off the stuff on top and leave what's in the grain. Okay, so the gel stain has dried overnight. I'm going to try sanding off the excess on top, and hopefully the stuff that's down in the grain will stay. And this is 220 grit sandpaper, so it's not too aggressive. I want to make sure to get all the dust out of the grain so it doesn't cover the white gel stain. Now we'll wipe it down with some naphtha. See how it looks. So I decided to put gel stain on the whole piece now. I like how the gel stain looks on the top, and this way it'll all be uniform. And I'm following the same procedure that I used on the top. Well, somehow I managed to lose part of the door handles. They're each supposed to be two-piece, like that. But I think that's how it, or would it go like that? I don't know. But anyway, I lost this piece for the other handle, and I looked all around the garage for it. There's a bee flying around here. Couldn't find it. So instead of getting new handles, I decided why not just go handleless and fill in these holes. Figure I'll use another fill stick for that. And then install one of these latches so that you just need to push on the door and it'll open. Hopefully that won't be too complicated. Doesn't look like it is. And this will probably be visible, but at this point I've been working on this for I think two and a half weeks on and off, and I need to wrap it up, so however it looks, it'll be okay. So the first thing I have to do is put a little filler in there so that I don't need to fill the entire thing with the stick. It has something to support it. So I just happen to have this, which I think is possibly an old chopstick, and it's the exact correct size. So I cut it into little pieces, and I'll just, need to glue first. Then put this in just below the surface. And then I can start filling it. Church bell's ringing. Can you hear it? So I'm going to use this plastic tool thing. I don't want to use a metal blade because I just put the gel stain on this last night. And I don't want to end up scraping all the gel stain off. Although I will be sanding it a little bit to remove some of it, but I don't want to remove all of it. Maybe I should darken that. Yeah, I think it's too light. Try this one. Oops. So I think after I sand this lightly, the whole thing, to remove a little bit of the gel stain, that'll darken up the whole thing a little bit, and this will probably look good, or it'll be okay, this color. So I'm trying to install the doors, but I ran into an issue with this one. It gets stuck on the bottom, right about here. It rubs down here, so, and this one's fine though. So I think I'm going to try just putting a shim behind the bottom hinge and I just cut out a piece of veneer for shim. So hopefully that will bring the bottom corner up, and then it'll close. And also the top of the door is a little low compared to the one on the left, so that should also bring the tops of them more level. On the other side, on the left door, there's already a shim in the bottom, I think the bottom hinge on that one. And that was there when I got it. And it looked like it'd been there a long time. Alright, that second shim did the trick. There's this very slight drag on the bottom, but it's not bad. Time to spray on the top coat. I'm just using a clear satin lacquer. I already see some things I don't like about it, some details I'd like to change, but before I do anything, I feel like I should just get some lacquer on there and see how it looks. Okay, it's a new day, and you may remember yesterday I put on the doors, and I had to shim this one so that it wouldn't catch at the bottom. And the other one was closing fine, but now it gets stuck on the bottom. And this reminded me of something important to remember when you're doing this kind of work, because you got to ask yourself, why was it fine yesterday and now it's getting stuck on the bottom? It probably has to do with the way it's sitting on the dolly beneath it. And this is a good reason to not make these kind of adjustments until it's on whatever base it's supposed to be on. In this case, the legs. Right now the door's stuck on the bottom, but if I lift it up a little bit off the dolly, well, now it's free. It's not stuck, which tells me that it probably has something to do with the pressure that the dolly is putting on it in whatever particular spot it's sitting on it. So I should really just get the legs on before I make any more adjustments to it, because it's flexing a particular way when it sits on this dolly, then it's going to flex a different way when it's on the legs. So just got to put the legs on, which I was waiting to the last minute to do because that makes it a lot harder to move around, but almost done. But before I put the legs on, I'm going to install these latches. And it already has a stop here for the doors, so I'm going to use that to get my initial spot to put the latch. And the latch has a couple of elongated holes so that I'll have a little bit of adjustment back or forth for some fine tuning, but lining it up with this should be a pretty good starting point. So I'm going to clamp this about where I think it needs to be, and then I just need to go underneath and drill a few holes for the screws. Okay, so now I've got it in there with just 2 screws in case I need to adjust it, and it's a magnetic catch, so this piece is going to go on the door, but just for now I'll just put it there and then see if it works. So that's where the door will stop, and that looks pretty good. And then it opens. And actually, if it stays like this, if I don't have to adjust it, I can actually leave that. There's still room to push it in. But I'll get the other one installed and then fine tune them just so they're all, both doors come to the same spot and line up and all that. But it looks like it's going to work. Oh, actually I have to put that on here. So I think to get the placing for that, I'll just close the door. Just trace around it, then I'll know the placement and I can just drill the holes and screw it on. Okay, I got the plate on. It works. Oops. One thing I'm not crazy about with this latch is that the screw head is a little bit too big for the plate, or the hole in the plate's a little too small for the screw, so it sits up a little bit proud of the surface of the plate, which seems like it would interfere with it making good contact with the magnet. And it does work. It latches, but I wonder if it would latch better if that was either a smaller screw or a bigger hole. It's finally time to put the legs back on. Getting close. Okay, it's on its feet now, and as I suspected earlier, the store is now free. It's not rubbing anymore, but there's a new problem. This magnetic catch is not catching, and I think it's because of that screw that I mentioned earlier that sticks out past the surface of the plate. I think if it was placed if I had placed the plate just a little bit to the left, then the screw head would kind of fit right in this little tiny space in here between the two magnets, and it would probably work, but I think instead of trying to move it, I'm just going to try to enlarge the screw hole. I think that might actually work. And that did the trick. So I'm not crazy about this white section on the bottom down here. So got some paint, and I'm going to paint that, and hopefully it won't stick out as much. I think it'll look better. And then once that's done, I think I'm done with this. Okay, just one more thing. I'm going to put this paint in these grooves too, and the grooves that go down vertically on the front. I feel like it looks a little sloppy with the white gel stain in there. It's not even, and I just think it'll look better darker. And here it is, all finished. Not sure how I feel about this one. I did the best I could with it, but I think if I were to do it again, I would do some things differently. But it's a lot nicer than it was when I got it. Thanks for watching.